A bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everyone. This is Team Rabbit Hole Edition 301 with Lady Kellz, Rooted Space, Teacher, Healer, Hustler. Jim is always writing these. Pisces. Join the team as we get to know Kelly, a former breakdancer and club party planner turned holistic mystic. Whether she's leading yoga classes, turning people on to self-inflicted myofascial release, straightening out business plans, or learning more about sovereignty and homesteading, this little fishy is helping herself and others swim towards the deep blue sea of actualization. It hurts so good.
Yeah.
I had to get it in there somehow. That's her trademark. It hurts so good, myofascial release. And I don't know if I misheard you, but yeah, yoga classes, not Goa classes, but that's all good. So something we do here on the podcast, as you know, is usually, this is crazy. It came up, so it is the card. That's funny. Something we usually do is correspond the thing, but I've been pulling cards and I just shuffled my deck. Let's pull some cards and then we'll get into how I know you, Kelly, and we'll hear your story and stuff like that. But what do y'all got? I've got the Devil card. which is, yeah, you're a Cap rising. It's not terribly shocking. Your Saturn is conjunct, or my Saturn is conjunct your moon. The Devil card, I'll look it up really quick, but it's a major arcana if people don't know. Let me read more about it. So the Devil card is about, it says, I am the master deceiver and it is time to break the spell. Embracing your inner trickster, giving in to temptations, making choices based on impulse rather than desire, deceiving yourself and feeling hopeless. Heavy energy, heavy card. There's David Bowie in the Starman Tarot. Shout out DeAngelis, who's been on the podcast a few times. What do y'all got? I mean, there's an element of trickster. Even Facebook crashed today. There's trickster energy in the air. But I can talk more about that in a second. What do you got, Raphael? Cup?
I've got a much nicer card than you, David. David, I'm saying, Jim.
Habits of the heart.
So this is the Ace of Cups.
Oh yeah, new emotional beginnings.
Love, grace, enjoyment, the true heart, joy, content, abode, nourishment, abundance, birth of emotions and feelings.
All the feels. If people don't know, the Aces is like the beginning of that whole process. The Cups are the water signs. She is a Pisces,
overflowing emotion and energy and love.
Straight up, your chart is right now represented.
41.
The Devil.
41 in numerology, so which would be the 5, the Hierophant.
Nice.
Awesome. I guess mine kind of feeds off of that. I got the 10 of Air. This is the Raven, the land. Let me pull it back a little bit. It's a beautiful card. Yeah. And so this is about individualization, self-actualization, liberation, altered perceptions, new paradigms, great mysteries, paradoxes. It's a time of independence and no longer bound by others' opinions. Walk your own path. See and know your potential, the self as whole, and it's time to grow up and leave home.
That is I was going to say that last bit was probably the most.
Can you show the card again or the name just so I understand the system? It's a
10 of Air.
Oh,
so
all right. 10 of, all right. Great.
Which is my card as a Gemini.
Nice. That's a 63-9 in the numerology I use. So it's 639 or 369 almost, let's say.
Ooh.
639, yeah.
Combo.
Yeah, it's got a big eyeball there. There's a huge eyeball in the background here. So eyeballs.
Okay.
It's funny
Yeah.
because Ten of Swords is not typically a pleasant. It's like, oh my god, you're waking up with nightmares. Your brain is freaking out and overloading.
Yeah, it's an
Typically, it's like
unusual
evolve or die.
definition for that
Yeah,
card.
yeah. So what you got is much more pleasant. But I think the end definition was really the most appropriate, I guess you could say, where it's like it's an end of a way of thinking, and you have to evolve or die, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Have some fun with it. You can play in the dirt, the devil's in the details, kind of thing. And then his Ace of Cups is saying something to the effect of starting new emotional and creative journeys, etc. So between those cards, Devil, Ace of Cups, and that 10 of Air, what, if anything, resonates or pops for you, Kelly?
For your card, the numerology really popped on the 4. It was 3 plus 1. And rooted space is numerology number 4. For me, I'm Capricorn, which is the devil sign, and
Devil rising.
um, the devil's in the details, right? So when I was choosing my name for rooted space, I did numerology on it. It ended up being a 4, and for me, that was very stable. It was something that had a foundation of a square, and supported itself. So that kind of resonates there. And
And
definitely with
go ahead.
the Ace of Cups and even the 10 of Air Swords, whatever. Um, I am kind of leaving behind the past and kind of moving forward on my own path. And of course, being a Pisces, that's very emotional for me. Digging deep in the Scorpio moon as well. Um, but those steps have to be made, and that's very Capricornish as well.
Yeah, you do have a grand water trine. Your sun is in Pisces, conjunct your south. No, not conjunct. No, it's not. So sun in Pisces, and that is trining your moon and Uranus that are conjuncted to Scorpio, which are actually on top of my Saturn. And then you have a Jupiter in Cancer. So huge, grand old water sign. So I'm curious. Well, I'm trying to think. I have no clue how I stumbled upon you years ago. Uh, I must have added you as a Facebook friend or something because probably around 2015, 16 maybe, you shared a post of mine. Uh, I mean, we've crossed paths, but we never really talked. I should say you're one of the few people that we've had on the show that I've actually met in the flesh, so that's kind of unique and different. But what I can't get into, I mean, I have no clue about how I think I just added you because you look cool or you were into the, like, psychedelic kind of stuff at the time or on the same wave kind of thing. I'm not sure if it was because of a certain group or whatever. Ironically, Facebook crashed today or whatever, so it wouldn't have happened if on one of those days. But yeah, that's basically how I got to know you, and then over time we've gotten closer, and now we're friends. So it's more an interesting. I mean, that was like a long time ago. I didn't really talk to you till last October, ironically, when I was dealing with addictions, devil card, and you kind of gave me permission to stop smoking cannabis. I was blasting through a lot of cannabis oil. It wasn't even cannabis oil, actually. It was like THC A or something. Anyway, the point is, you're like, do you really want to do that? And I'm like, no. And then I quit and kind of started talking more from there. So, I know your story to a degree, but this is a good chance to kind of get into the details, so to speak. Tell us where you were born, raised, culture, all that jazz, and I'll shut the fuck up.
All right. So thank you for having me today. Yeah, so I'm originally from Alabama, Dothan, Alabama. So it's the most southeast city in Alabama on the Georgia, Florida, Alabama border. Small town, but a lot of culture came from that. A lot of people were ended up being really good at what they do because there was nothing to do there except be you. I had a good childhood, from what I thought or think. I'll say that it was good. I played a lot, and I was into things like that were all about movement. So whether it was gymnastics, dance, cheerleading at the time, I was all about the movement, and my body knows that very well. It's my language that I speak, and I was raised by really Christian upbringing, in church every Sunday and Wednesday, and
So
that was just
twice a week,
life.
one for each barrel. We got to make sure you don't
Yeah,
slip midweek.
or just hide. It was fun for me. It gave me community. There were tight communities where we got to play a lot, got to explore, and I knew that I was kind of a leader in a certain way, but at the same time, I was one of the young ones, so I was a bit of a follower at the same time, until I started to Get into high school, I really started to individuate, and I realized that I wasn't necessarily like everybody else. There was just something different that I couldn't really pin down, um, until I would go to church, and then I was like, "Oh, that really doesn't resonate with me." I'm feeling guilty. I don't like feeling guilty, and started to question a lot of my Christianity upbringing, and then got into like tarot cards, and that was totally forbidden in my home, so I'd have it in my room, and Ouija board and things like that, which really got me in trouble.
Some
I don't like the
Scorpion
Ouija
moon
board.
shit.
Yeah, just curious about everything that was forbidden. And so my late high school years, I just started exploring different things. Didn't get into too many drugs or anything like that. Um, but did test out cigarettes and things. Got banned from the cheerleading squad for smoking cigarettes, and just dabbling into the unknown. Um, and then
See,
when
that's
I
the devil
graduated,
card. You're being a little
a
ratchet
little
little
bit of a
bitch.
devil in me. Yeah, a little
Getting
bit.
kicked off the cheerleading squad for smoking. Tell us a little about that. I mean, what were the circumstances? That's odd. It's atypical. It's very
Oh,
Grease. It's like go Grease Lightning. I have, like
yeah,
you were the bad girl, I guess.
yeah.
What happened?
Well,
I'm curious.
I didn't really fall to peer pressure. I was more just curious. On one side of my family, pretty much everybody smoked, but my parents were like clean, straight edge. They didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they were in church, just hardcore. Um, and I was just like, what's the opposite of that? Okay, and let me get into a little bit of that. So, me and some friends were spending the night together, and their mom smoked, and so we would get the cigarettes and smoke, and
Yoink.
then yeah. So by ninth grade, I was smoking, and off to cheerleading camp we go the first week without cigarettes. And the funny thing is, we're walking we're on a college campus. We're at the University of Alabama, and we're walking to the gym to practice, and somebody just throws a cigarette out the window of their car. And I just kind of pick it up, and I just detour around the back of the building, and the two other friends that
It was
smoked
still
too with
cherried.
me.
You took a cherried
Yes.
toss. You're
I
lucky.
was
'Cause-
like, "This is
yeah.
for me." I was like, "This is totally for me."
It's a fallen
And
angel. The
I had
cigarette fell from the
no
heavens, still
guilt
burning.
no guilt around it. I thought I was just doing what I was supposed to be doing. And that fell out of the sky for me. And so we smoked it, and then, got away with it. And then later on, we went back to the dorms, and it was lunch break, and there were about 5 of us that smoked on both squads, and we decided to all light up in a dorm room at the same time.
Real smart.
And yeah, that one didn't work out too well. We all got caught, and we were all dismissed at that time. Yeah.
What you gonna do when they come for you? All right, so I was just curious about that. It's an interesting story
Yeah.
because most people aren't like I was a cheerleader and I got kicked off for smoking. That seems it's funny because I remember being in like kindergarten or first grade, and I was at a private school, and I threw down my bat. Like we were at a picnic at somebody's house, a private party, and like right at the end of the school year, and I threw down my bat in indignation, like frustration, and they gave me a detention. I got a detention like in like.
Anger.
Well, I was like in kindergarten or first grade, and all these kids were like eighth graders and shit. I'm just sitting there being like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?" So breaking the rules happens, but those kinds of rebellious stories. My Jupiter is in Aquarius, which is conjunct your Venus, so it's not terribly surprising that we're pushing the limits on things and kind of fucking around to find out. Anyway, didn't mean to detour you there. So you said you weren't doing too many drugs. You did smoke some cigarettes. You were in high school. How did you get out of Dothan?
So I'm just gonna continue on from that because it does relate later on what we'll talk about. So I did get kicked off the squad, whatever, and then 2 years later, I was back on the squad, and I was always captain of the squad. So my thing was like, let's dance. I didn't care about the cheering; we just dance. And so I did get to reclaim that position in my senior year. But that summer, I was tumbling in the front yard and fell in a hole doing a backflip and tore my ACL. So in 10th grade, I'm already got some injuries going on. It was a year recovery.
You do have Chiron and
And
Taurus. Seems
yeah,
like
I
a
do.
Chiron
I
and
have a
Taurus sitch.
Yeah, where I injure myself quite often, and, I wonder, is it kinda trying to slow me down, in life sometimes to rethink what I'm doing, in retrospect, but, went through that, and then, I was under my parents' wing a lot during that time, so I really was getting antsy and really wanting to get out from under my parents' wing now that I'm a senior. My leg is healed, I can walk, I can do my own thing, and so, after I graduated, I um I started messing around with psychedelics, and it was kind of a hub where I lived because it was in between Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and Atlanta. And so there were a lot of drugs there in that area at the time, and they were good. They were good drugs. I leaned towards the psychedelics that really opened my mind. I remember when I first did them, I was like, I will be doing this the rest of my life. Um, Make sure everybody does it at some point. And
That's definitely a Team
so
Rabbit Hole
anybody I
ethos.
yeah, so anybody I came around, it was like either you're doing this or we probably won't be hanging out. And at that time is when raving was kind of underground, and I was a dancer and movement artist already. So raving really gave me an environment to move forward with that. So I started dancing, and if you ever were part of the underground rave scene, it was just a blast. It was just nothing but fun. Visuals, movement, new movements were being created, new sounds were being created, music wise. Um, it was a collective of people that were kind of like rabbit hole people. We were all curious and we were opening ourselves up to this new experience. And it was plur, like peace,
Peace,
love,
love, unity, and
unity and respect.
respect. I love the respect at the end. It's like, don't touch me. I didn't say yes, even though we're
Oh
like
no,
in an
let me give you a
orgy
back
on
massage.
ecstasy.
I don't even know you.
Right. What
Yeah.
kind of years was that? I'm curious because I just listened to Daft Punk's Alive 97, I guess it is. Their first one. They have Alive 2007, Alive 97, I think. And that's 97, that's the mid 90s, but at that point the scene was pretty, I mean, established, I guess you could say, dance music and kind of stuff. Was that like the early 90s, mid 90s?
It was a late 90s, so I'd say like 98.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
Daft Punk was a thing. I'm just trying to contextualize in my brain like what you might have been listening to, Prodigy probably,
I
and
wasn't
whatever's happening.
listening to any of that. I grew up on hip hop, like Kilo and Outkast and just gangster rap music. I
See, this is
like
what she is, a hustler, guys. I put there for a
Wu
reason.
Tang Clan.
That's what I was about to say. Wu-Tang Clan. Slick Rick.
Slick Rick. Oh, I was actually supposed to dance for Slick Rick and Talib Kweli in my
Ooh.
hometown at the Peanut Festival,
The
and guess
Peanut
what?
Festival. She
I
broke her
tore
leg
my
or something.
ACL
Yeah, yeah.
for the second time.
Mm. The
So
devil's just bringing you
anytime
down.
I was anytime I was really getting excited about something in life, I would tear my ACL.
Mm. Wonder what that's about. It's funny though
Yeah.
because I just heard
That's
I
like
mean,
the Achilles nerve or something, just for
mhm.
someone who doesn't know
It's
that.
the if you were to pull your kneecap back,
Oh.
there's a ligament that holds the
Mm.
bottom part of your leg to the top, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really thick.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's like a football injury. Like football players tear their ACL, not little fishy Pisces 5'2" 2.5" tall girls.
You're going pretty hard in the paint with those Dance Dance
Uh,
Revolution moves.
it was before then. I could have created Dance Dance Revolution.
It's funny because I had never, I mean, I when I was in middle school, Outkast's album with like Sorry Miss Jackson and stuff like that was popular, but I had not until the other day heard their debut album ever. I don't know why I never checked it out. Aquemini. Andre's a Gemini, and I guess Big Boy is an
Aquarius.
Aquarius, and
Hmm.
it's fucking good. Like it's solid
Probably
as
one of my
heck.
favorite albums of theirs. I
It's
also
so
like
good.
Southern Playalistic Cadillac Funky Music.
The fact
I
that you
think
can
that was
remember
their
that,
first.
yeah.
Oh, it was my life. Back then you knew every word to every song. I don't know what happens now. I don't remember any of the words, which I don't
Kids
really listen to
mumble.
music with a lot of words anymore. Mumble rap. Ugh.
Yeah. So you were almost. How far? I mean, I don't want to chop off your history story. Was that second ACL tear much further down the line?
It was 10 years.
All right, so that's a hot minute. All right, so you were doing the rave stuff and having a blast, and did you go to school?
Yeah, so, straight out of school, I had ironically, my mom put me in a pageant, at the school, and I won, and, was really embarrassed about it, but I
Why were
got
you
a
embarrassed?
scholarship. I just was not that type of person, and,
Scorpion man,
I
gotcha.
all my friends should have, like, won that position, but I did get a scholarship out of it, and so I started at community college and then went to, the Troy State University of Dothan and majored in psychology and minored in computer information systems, and pretty much was a raver 4 days out of the week and went to school 4 days out of the week, worked at the hospital on the cancer floor as a PCA, patient care assistant, for 4 years and, graduated.
How was working on a cancer ward?
I liked it. I like taking care of people. It was emotional at times because, those people are more likely there was a lot of people that died. Um, but you can I wanted to work on the baby unit because I loved babies, and my best friend at the time, she ended up working on that floor, and I got the geriatrics, and I was like, "Ugh." And
They'd heard you'd
I
smoke
fell in
cigarettes. They're like, "Give her the old people."
no, I fell in love with them, like, I realized that you can learn a lot from old people, like, they have stories they can tell you, they have wisdom, and you see what their bodies are like at the end of their life, and I'm like, "What did you do all your life, to end up like this?" And, um, I don't know, I really liked it until, somebody died on me, and I thought it was my fault, and because I wore some perfume, and it got to the point where it became too emotional for me, with what I had to do, and so, I let that job go.
Pieced out. All right. So when I know that you were partying and getting your degree and having fun, not everybody can keep the regimen of raving up with school load. So good on you. You graduated. You have a degree in psychology, I guess.
I
Um,
do.
so that's cool. What happened after college?
So, after college, so when we were raving, we ran in circles. I had, like, 4 best friends, I had a boyfriend, and then he had a bunch of best friends, and we all ran in the same circles. We pretty much never slept, we always stayed together, we were partying every weekend, whether it was in Florida, in Panama City, or whether it was in Atlanta, going to shows. And back then, is you go to shows, but the shows were like dance parties. You dance the whole time, and we had gotten into breakdancing, and kind of was like, okay, we're gonna get off the drugs. So we're gonna not do this anymore. We want to kind of see what life's like. We had, some really crazy experiences, and it was kind of like life saying you need to slow down. So got off the drugs, um, started going to church at the we went to a church, and I was like, "Okay, I need something," because, like, drugs held me up for a long time, but now it's like they're hurting my life. So let's go to this church, and we found, like, a non-denominational church, and guess where this church was? When we got into the church, it was the same building of the last rave that I went to and had a crazy experience in, and it turned into a church.
Hmm.
I love the church. The pastor was very philosophical. He was like speaking my language until he started saying some things like, "These people are going to hell, and that's why these people are going to hell." And I was like, you know what? How does he know? I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to leave. And so me and my husband left, and then we were kind of doing some soul searching. He wasn't my husband at that time. And then we decided to get married. So we're breakdancing, we're getting married, and we decide to just up and move one night. I mean, randomly, literally randomly. Let's go to Atlanta. I know somebody there. I'm pretty sure they'll let us stay there. So we packed the car, drove to Atlanta, and tried to find where these people lived because we didn't talk to them before we came. And we finally found them and pulled up at their place at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And we're like, "Hey, we were just wondering if
We're little
they
tumbleweeds. Can we
wanted
hang
some
out?
roommates,
Yeah.
someone to, like, share rent." And so, they were down for it. So there were 4 adults and a big mastiff dog living in a 2-bedroom small apartment. but we made it. It was kind of like a springboard for us, and then we ended up getting our own place, and we kept springboarding other people from our hometown Dothan up to Atlanta, like usually break dancers or friends that were in the party scene. And we started finding break dancers in Atlanta, and kind of got part of that scene. So that was pretty cool for 4 or 5 years.
When did you start planning parties? Because I know it escalated at some point where you guys were really
Yeah.
involved with like coordinating clubs of
Yeah.
different kind of ethnicities and music styles and stuff.
So we were breakdancing, and then in Atlanta at the time, it was like all the nationalities or races had their own clubs that they went to. It was really segregated. And we were able to take kind of like the trendsetters from each of those clubs and put them into one club. And it really kind of started a new lifestyle. Like we were bringing DJs from New York and France and a lot of different places that played kind of the similar music. It was like there was house, there was jungle, there was Baltimore music, crunk, a lot of different styles, and it was kind of mashup music. And we had DJs, so we started managing DJs and throwing these parties that brought in different sponsorships and different artists from around the world. Like we had Buff Monster on, which he makes he has his own color pink, and he would draw these characters that kind of resembled like boobs, and we would have a sponsor come in for a video game called table tennis, and we would have like a table tennis set up, and people would be playing table tennis, and there would be visuals of Buff Monster's art, and then girls walking around with these bras with Buff Monster's art on it. So it was real inclusive and kind of like enmeshed with everything that was going on. So people really felt part of what we were doing. Like we had a party called Sloppy Seconds. It was every second Saturday. And about that time, it was like cool to create the flyers. My husband was a graphic designer, so he would create the flyers, and it was on MySpace back then. It was kind of before Facebook, where we were able to actually have creative control over our pages, and it really drew a lot of people
Is
to.
Tom your top friend? Kind of creative control.
Absolutely.
I remember. I remember picking songs and all that shit. It was like a big deal. It's like, who are my top friends?
Yeah.
It was a little more like web designy, I guess you could put it that way.
Yeah, we were writing code. We were
Mm.
learning how to write code because we loved what we were doing.
Mm.
Yeah. And yeah, so that lasted until about 2007, and the parties were expanding. We had several different types of parties going on at several different venues. It was pretty well known if you were like in street culture. It kind of went hand in hand with like graffiti and breakdancing, DJing, the whole 9 yards. It was really fun.
ATL in the house. So when that kind of was there a specific event that like kind of shriveled back for, or were you just kind of like, this chapter's done, or how'd that work?
So that's when it started to get to where like it was moving really fast, and we had moved from a small town to a large metropolitan city. We were changing scenes, we were growing differently, and me and my husband started to grow apart, and I tore my ACL, and it was
Third
time
time,
to
or that was the second one?
that was the second time. Yeah,
I
it was
got
in
you.
2007.
So you would have
And
been music video girl, but not so much.
I was totally going for music video dancer girl, yeah. And I was teaching breakdancing and running a dance studio called Gotta Dance. I was kind of the assistant to the owner, um, and kind of building that. But when I tore my ACL, I was like, okay, I need to go home to my mom for a little bit and heal, because it's a long recovery, and it's not really fun. So I went home, and then when I came back, me and my husband decided to separate after a little while. And after that, it was kind of like, I'm free. And I knew all the clubs around, so I never was a drinker. I never really drank. And so I started hanging around some new friends, and they were drinkers, and so I was finding myself drinking a lot and partying because I was feeling free and being real adventurous, like exploring whatever. But after a while, I was kind of like, I'm not sure about this life anymore. and a series of circumstances happened, and I decided to quit drinking, and that maybe I need to make some changes in my life. Are you still there?
Yeah, he's trying to reconnect. I'm still thinking of all that dancing, but I'm sure I guess Jim would now be asking you about however it continued. I almost want to talk more about the music, but since we want to
Yeah.
get through whole life, no, just because for me, when you mention music or hip hop, this is one of the things I've listened to mainly. The so-called golden era hip hop, I guess, which is why I would
Hmm.
even mention. I mean, Slick Rick is not really technically a part of that, and he's more like fun because when do you have an guy with an UK accent telling these kind of, crazy stories in a quite hilarious fashion, I would say. And just how different the music is, or how much you can tell the difference of music just by the vibe it has. So even back then, you would
Hmm.
listen to something and like, oh, it has a nice vibe. Even, maybe I'm 15 years old, I don't even really understand what they're singing, especially when years later you realize basically every second or third word is something about drugs or something. I mean, back then it wasn't even that bad. It was mainly talking about weed, and now they talk about codeine and whatever other crazy
Yep.
stuff they have. Um, so that, but also just even that you could tell, oh, is the music, does it give you a good vibe? And maybe one of the best examples would be De La Soul. And then later
Yeah.
you, at least as a non-English native speaker, later then you realize like, what are they actually singing? And like, wow, at least compared to the gangster whatever DMX, which can also be fun, especially again compared to what they have now, but maybe this means someone's getting old, who knows. But
Yeah.
that you could really tell like the vibe, and it would usually even match the lyrics. So I just really found that interesting as a journey, because when you become
Yeah.
conscious of music and how you relate to it, let's say, then of course it can be a huge mood setter, and it can do so many things if you know how to deal with it. And then last thing, just in terms of parallels, I definitely didn't go that far, but I didn't ever learn breakdance deliberately because I was like, oh, I'm not gonna break my neck. But I did learn some up rocking and locking,
Yeah.
popping, and all this kind of stuff. I even had some great teachers. So yeah, it's definitely up to this day something I draw from. Even just learning how to sense the beat, do isolations, and all of that. And when you do
Hmm.
know that, and then you know a few dance moves, and then you have some intuition, I think then it can be really fun. So it's a yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I guess you don't realize how much I didn't realize how much music influenced me, but I guess I listened to rap music because I was smoking weed at the time. So I did resonate with it. When I go back and listen to Biggie songs, I'm just like, what in the world? Why would I even like him? But I liked his beats. So it's like that beat would move my body. I literally could not go into a club and not dance. So when I tore my ACL, the reason I decided to go back home was because it literally broke my heart to hear music and not be able to move. And I would try and I would hurt myself even more. So I went through a period where if I went and danced one night, then I couldn't walk for 2 days. I'd be in the bed with my legs up. And I was like, this is not working. um, yeah. And, I listen to a lot of like underground hip hop. So a lot of that music originated in Atlanta from homegrown home roots. And it was lyrics of people expressing themselves, not like you hear on the radio today. There was like storytelling, there was like battle raps, there was all different types of hip hop or rap music that I became engaged with. And usually it was underground and it wasn't ever mainstream music. Um, and that was kind of the niche that set me apart. So I couldn't just go run into a club, like an everyday club, because it really doesn't speak to me. It would be too fancy or too high heelish. I was like in sneakers and my battle gear when I would go into a club. And um, you know Atlanta really had a scene for that. And that's what drew us to Atlanta was because we were breakdancing, and we entered Break Atlanta 1, and we were the crew from Alabama that was very inexperienced.
Mhm.
And then we ended up battling a crew from Florida that won. They won the whole thing. And like, I didn't know anything about spirituality, anything. And they were all like praying before, they were kind of getting in the vibe of their crew. And I was like, man, watch them. Look what they're doing. Like there's some connection between them that like I don't know if we have that. And I noticed it. I noticed the energy of it, and I was like, I like that. I want to be more like that. So when my crew, we started building crews here in Atlanta, and there was more of that vibe. And so we'd go to like MJQ in Atlanta every Wednesday night, and that was my church. We would go break dance in the back room. You couldn't see anything; it was dark, but we were breaking in there, you know. And
Is
that's where a lot of
MJQ
that
an
music
acronym for
was.
magic? I mean, is that
No,
what they're
but that's
going for?
kind of, I
Magic?
don't know. I don't know. I
Uh,
do not know.
I don't need to go down the rabbit hole too hard, but I mean, NWA existed. Obviously, there's always been an element of edge in any music kind of situation, but I know that there's a parallel between the kind of industrial, co- um, the for-profit prison kind of stuff, and where
Hmm.
rap went at some point. Basically, they're like,
Yeah.
push more violent stuff, and people will emulate that culture, and it will basically make people, you know, for-profit slaves in a system. I mean, it's not all. It's not like an
I
entire
was like NWO and
NWA or NWO is wrestling, New World Order. The
New
NWA, N words with an attitude, like with Ice Cube and stuff. That was like the late
Ice
'80s.
Cube.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
He
think so.
talks about it now.
Yeah, I think they were largely, because I don't know enough about De La Soul and stuff, but there was kind of, I mean, at some point it was like the Jackson Five and disco and stuff, and then it started kind of turning into other stuff. And clearly, there's always going to be a spectrum of polarities and realities and stuff. So you're going to have more, just a variety of things. But the kind of dark underbelly, I guess you could say, of the culture at one point was people were like, "Yo, if you raise up people selling crack and shooting people and all this stuff, they'll emulate you essentially, and then we will harvest that crop of people." Essentially, check that shit out though. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm rambling about that. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's crazy. My internet went off and it was like, your camera's not being registered, the website's down. I'm like, this is all bullshit, devil card. Yeah, not true. um in any event, so you were doing cool stuff in Atlanta, and then it kind of shifted gears when you busted up your ACL for the second time. ATL with the ACL. So so when you went down to it's like I'm thinking of Freddie Mercury, Mama, ooh. It's like you went back down to home. What was the situation? How did you, I mean, you didn't stay there forever, so how'd that go?
No, no. I went back home, healed, and I came back, and it was time to separate from my husband. And with that, I kind of had to let go of the party scene as it was, and it was kind of transitioning anyway. We were kind of hit a point where we were like, break apart. Now, what do we all
It
do?
wasn't Plur anymore. It was getting harder
It
and
wasn't
crazier.
Plur anymore. The psychedelics were gone. We were more on like status.
Harder
I mean, I'm
drugs.
like, what is status here? Went to
Clout.
alcohol, which was dumb, you know. So um, so I was about to hit 27, which is my Saturn return, and
Hmm.
things started changing. A lot, life just started changing. I was questioning a lot of things. I was
This is your
a lot of my
proverbial dark
friends.
night of the soul, right? All
This
right, I
is
didn't
my
mean to cut you
proverbial
off. I'm
dark
like,
night of the
yeah,
soul. Yeah,
Saturn returns.
yeah,
Saturn is the ruler of the devil card. He came in with a
yeah.
fucking hammer on your
Vi
kneecap.
vengeance, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I decided not to do like a drink or do any drugs or anything anymore, I started looking around and I'm like, do you even care, best friend, that I've made this decision? Oh, I'm not getting invited to places anymore. I just started noticing, like, unless you're partying, like, you're not on the roster anymore as a friend. And I started questioning my friendships and thinking a little deeper about the meaning of life, and nothing really made sense. I was also dealing with, heartbreak from not being able to dance, which I wasn't even able to admit for like several years that I couldn't dance because it just hurt me so much. I mean, it was literally a death of me, that took a long time to die. And I felt like I had no life. My whole life just vanished out from underneath me. And I started spending a lot of time by myself. And it wasn't necessarily by choice. It's just the way the universe was
Positioning
handling
you.
me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I had a lot of questions, and nobody, like, when I started speaking to people, it's like as if they couldn't hear me, they couldn't see me. I mean, I even was like, "Am I dead? Am I a ghost? Like, what's wrong?" do you not hear the words that are coming out of my mouth? And nobody could. And so I was like, I'm just going to take some time off. And actually, I lost my job. Like a lot of things changed. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go get a job. I ended up getting a job at a major nonprofit. And I started, that was like magical how that happened. I'm like, I don't even know how to use Outlook or this your system on the computer, but
I'm a Luddite. You're not a
the
Luddite.
lady was like, "Oh, how did you do that on my calendar?" And I'm like, "Do what?" And she's like, "You color coded my days." And I was like, "Oh, I was just playing around because I like the colors."
Hmm.
Whatever, it worked for her. I was like her favorite person, and I was like into quotes at that time, so I was inspiring her with my quotes daily, and that's I guess what she needed at the time. So I did that for 4 years, and was kind of getting my life straight. I was making more money now, and I was not needing to go out, and I had a job that took up a lot of time, and I was learning more things about the world. I was learning about corporations, I was learning about nonprofits, and I was like, if I could just get rid of these high heels, everything would be good. And then one day, and I started finding my way into like tech again because I have a computer information systems degree. And I was finding that I'm good at systems. Like I'm good at social media. I was good at
Venus and
Salesforce.
Aquarius, Saturn and Virgo
Yeah.
stuffs.
And so I found that I was kind of like a cross-functional person. Like they literally told me they could not define my position. They're like, we can't define you. Like you're undefinable. And I was like, I guess that's a good thing. So they put me to where I worked with all the teams. I was kind of like the liaison between all the different teams. And so I had access to a lot of information. And one day Monsanto called my phone. And this is like in
That was on
2012.
the caller ID, or how'd that work?
Yes. Yeah.
Monsanto
And
Inc.
I was like, I couldn't even answer it. I couldn't even pick up the phone. I was like, why? And so I went into the system and I was like, what do we do business with them? And pretty much what we did, I asked my boss lady, which was the president of the organization, I was like, why are we working with Monsanto? In what capacity? And she's like, well, we make corporations look good by their corporate responsibility. They pay us a bunch of money. We give them some nonprofit work for their people to do.
It's like PR spin, basically.
PR spin, yeah. That was George Bush's brother, Neil Bush's organization, the Thousand Points of Light. So Points of Light Institute is what George Bush referenced in his, 1997 speech about the New
People
World
who
Order.
don't know, but the 1,000 points of light is not just anything. Yeah. Hmm.
Right.
Also, in terms of a concept, I think it's like a Kabbalistic concept or something. And of
I
course,
think
then
it's
those
Luciferian.
those
Devil card.
people, they go crazy about it. Well, that's up for you to judge, Jim. But that's not anything so interesting. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean how big that nonprofit was, but if it was Bush's brother, it was probably big enough. Because I was about to say, not to, denigrate in any way, shape, or form what you did there or your intentions, which I'm sure weren't like that. But other than that, I'm sure then you realized, oh, typical nonprofit greenwashing scam, like how so many companies do it, whether it's with
Yeah.
bio labels or anything they can do. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So it was like, there's a front for it because there's like Hands On Network, which is an organization it helps nonprofits. It teaches we taught people how to manage volunteers for volunteer projects in the world. And that's what they're ramping up to do. So we were nationwide. There's a Hands On Network in every state, in a lot of cities within those states. So it's a network. And then the parent company is Points of Light Institute, and they work with all the major corporations like Home Depot, Walmart, any one you can think of. They're generally with that company. So when I started learning about, I started getting into at that time conspiracy theory. But it wasn't theory because these things that I was learning about were
Where you're
things
like,
that
oh
had
my
been
God, I'm
in
part of it.
court. Well, I
Like
wasn't
Aaron
putting it all
Brockovich.
together. I love her. I wasn't putting it all together yet. And then I was watching about the guy, Dr. Brzezinski, that came up with the cure for childhood cancer, and the government
No
pretty much
relation. Brzezinski.
stole
Same.
the cure, and now the children now get part 1 and part 2, but part 3 is under the patent of the other guy. So they're not implementing the full process to actually heal the children. And I was like, oh my gosh, and then it came up to the came into Monsanto and how the corn and how they were
Geoengineering and all that. Yeah.
geoengineering. And if you had a farm field, and you grew corn, and Monsanto had GMO corn, and the wind blew a little bit of corn into the other field, if one piece of corn was genetically modified, they took the profit of the whole field, taking out the farmers. And so my sister-in-law, her dad was actually one of those farmers. So it
That
was
lost his
firsthand. It was like
acreages.
connection. And I'm like, this stuff is not conspiracy. This is real. And so, of course, I went down so many rabbit holes. Some of them I was just like gave up. I was like, that's just too much for me. But the ones that were making sense and that I was seeing like these results in real life, like I went through an existential crisis. I was like, really, who am I at this point? Like, I've been working for the devil. I have lost my whole family. I can't dance anymore. I am broken completely. What the fuck? So I didn't want to talk to anybody. If I talked to you anyway, you couldn't hear me. The only people that could hear me was when I was in meditation, and it was almost as if I was speaking to like something else, and I didn't know what it was. And then I started noticing people on Facebook because now I'm on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, that resonates. And Jim, you were one of those people.
Waka
And
waka.
yeah, and I didn't know Jim for anything, but I'm like him, and then like a handful of other people that were speaking spiritual stuff, and it was resonating with me. And I was like, what is this? So I found some locals that were talking about it, and I introduced myself to them, and they all went to do the meditations. So I started going to meditation, and I'm like, I'm not doing it right. I'm not seeing anything, but, and I'm like, are all these people crazy? Like, well, they all got problems. I don't have problems. I'm not going to come anymore. So I quit going. And then I noticed my life just wasn't as good. So I went back. And then this time it's like I started like having more visuals when I would meditate. It was more clear. We would share after we did it because we did it as a group. And then I started getting invited to meditate with people privately in their homes. And I started, we would share afterwards. And what I realized is that, okay, I'm over here meditating and somebody over here is meditating, but we had the same vision. We were doing the same thing. Like we were in the same kingdom, same world. How is that possible? There's more to life than what meets the eye here. I was not worried about Hands-On Network and Points of Light Institute anymore. I'm like, where is this mystical world that is happening that nobody's paying attention to?
It's like Death Stars are
And
cool, but what's the force? Kind of thing.
yeah, I didn't need to watch movies, nothing. Like my life became so colorful when I started engaging with these people. Um, and they may not have ever really seen me, but I pay attention. I see everybody. I see more than what people think that I can see from them. And so um I started meeting with one of the guys that was in the meditation sessions, and he really spoke to me, Jason Harrison. He's doing his thing now. I think he keeps getting kicked off Facebook because he's telling the truth. So I haven't really seen him in a while to really know what's going on with him, but I think he has a television show now or some kind of show teaching self mastery. Um, but we would have telepathy, or um, he would start channeling like this Indian man one time. And it's like I didn't know what he was saying, but I was writing it down, like scribble scrabble. And then I would just start crying and I would just lose it. And I'm like, I think my grandfather just came to me and like said that it's okay that I wasn't there when he died. And I'm like, what is that? So it's like these weird things started happening, and I just kind of kept following that because it was so weird and so unbelievable, and nobody was talking about it. And then I'm like, well, this is my life. Am I going to have to go underground here? Because obviously I can't tell my parents this. They're going to think I'm crazy. My friends, they weren't really friends anyway, so it's no need to tell them anything. Got new friends over here. And so then it started just being like one-on-one. I called them people coming out of the woodworks. And it was just random people that came and had a message for me. And
Go to the
I
Georgia
would follow those.
Guidestones.
Yes, that was one of them.
I know. That's why I alluded
Literally.
to it.
Yeah, Made You Look Films, Carlos Ramsey. He has Made You Look Films, which is like on some rabbit hole stuff. He does film. He has a movie coming out with Kubrick soon.
Stanley
That
Kubrick.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I was just talking about because my nana just watched Apollo 13 the other day, but there's a documentary called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." I can't watch things like Apollo 13 at this point without a level of skepticism. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So we would go to things like the Georgia Guidestones and read cards. We met a couple out there and read cards. And by the end of the night, they were like, "We're so glad that we met y'all. Like, you've changed my life. My mom
You're a
just
point of
died."
light. No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
stop it.
Starseed, point of light.
Flip
Or
that, I
something.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hearing about star seeds and stuff. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. And then it was time for me to really figure. Oh, so I started samurai sword fighting, and I was being trained by this guy, and he was a genius, but he did not have people skills. And so in the middle of
Just
the
sword
night,
skills. It's like,
yeah,
let
just
the sword
swords.
do the talking.
Let my sword style. And so he ended up just moving in the middle of the night. Well, thank God I had learned those skills. So I'm still practicing my swords and stuff. And I'm by myself at my house because it gets to be where I'll have roommates, but then they're never at home. So pretty much I lived a whole year at my house by myself. And I was like, I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to start juicing. So I started juicing. I was playing around with my diet, trying different things. It became all about the body. It became all about the mind, all about the emotions. I was really tuned into those things. Like people were saying that I just think about myself. Well, at that moment, yes, that's what I was thinking about was who am I? That was a question, who am I?
There's a season for that.
Samurai,
I mean, it's like when the plane's going down,
yeah,
you got to do your own oxygen before you can help others, kind of thing.
yeah. And so, samurai sword fighting threw my shoulder out, and I'm like, okay, can't do that. No more fun. And so I go to a festival in Atlanta, and this random girl, I don't even really know her that well. We're just talking, and I was like, I need to fix my leg, I need to fix my arm, and I was like, I really just need to fix everything. And she's like, I know who you need to go see. And I was like, okay. And she told me Gina Minyard in Atlanta, she teaches yoga. So I went to Gina's class. I loved it. She spoke with tantric philosophy well, it was Anusara yoga based in tantric philosophy, and it really spoke to me. And I was like, okay, well, I don't do yoga, but I'm just going to go ahead and take her training. It's a year-long training. We meet 24 hours on the weekends, and I'm going to do it. And so I did, and it was one of the best things I'd ever done. Kind of changed my life because my life had gotten so, I guess it's not woo-woo because this stuff was real to me. Like I would have like people calling me from different places and telling me things about myself, and I'm like, how do you know? And it was like because they were psychic or they were channeling something, and this was happening on a lot,
On the
from people
regs.
I didn't know. Huh?
On the regs. On the
Yeah.
regular.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I needed to really learn more about myself to understand why this was happening. And so I started the yoga training, and it literally started healing my body. It was healing my mind. I was starting to feel confident again in my body, and that I wasn't going to be in a wheelchair or not be able to dance or move the way I wanted to. And so I did that for a year, and then I started teaching. And in that
Your
class,
North
it
Node's in
was things.
Virgo conjunct your Saturn, so it's like it's not surprising that like embodied kind of health is what triggered you, and then you just said I started teaching, so it's like, yep, right there in the chart.
Yeah. So even that spirituality started following me into that space because like we had partner work, and I was laying down beside this guy, and we were like doing eye gazing, and I'm looking at him, and I was like, I see a baby. And he's like, my wife is about to have a baby. And I'm like, interesting. Okay. So there's some connection here. And so then a week later, I was working with tree energy. And so I went and sat out by the tree, and I'm meditating by the tree. And then I go back to yoga class, and the guy's like, hey, were you like sitting by a tree in the front yard at this house in Buckhead? And I'm like, actually, I was. And he's like, yeah, I saw you. I mean, random. It's just like these synchronicities were happening, and it's like it's calling me to something. um a lady called me to Raleigh, North Carolina. I didn't know her. She was my brother's girlfriend. And I'm like, why is this girl so interested in me? Why does she want to meet me? And I go up there. She's like, I'm going to put you in a yoga class or private. I go to the private, and the lady is like, puts this book in front of me, and it's a book with a white wolf on it. And I was like, oh, well, that's the wolf that I was seeing on the way up here. And she looked at me dead in the eye and said, you know, people don't find me for no reason. And then she put me through the yoga. I released a bunch. And then after that, it like set me on a new path. And then I came back and found Gina Minyard with the yoga. And that was during the solar eclipse in, I don't know what year that was, maybe 2014, 15.
2017 was the Great American Eclipse. I was in Switzerland for a year, so I wasn't here
Before
for that.
It was before that.
You're putting me on the spot. I have no clue. But anyway, so
Yeah. Anyways.
16-ish. Okay.
Yeah, so I started paying attention to the eclipse because there was something going on with the eclipse and like blue moons. There were significant events happening around those energetic periods. And so, yeah, did the yoga, started teaching, and then I had a friend.
Was that yoga you were learning,
asked,
the Yogi Flight School thing? Is that the same stuff or totally different?
No, that's later.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So then I had a friend that lived out here. She was my best friend in Atlanta, and she lived out in Colorado, and she was going through some transition and asked me if I would move out here. And so I really didn't have anything holding me to Atlanta anymore. And so I just that day asked somebody on Facebook if they wanted to make a cross country trip in 4 hours, and somebody answered the call. And so this person, I drove to Atlanta from Alabama, picked that person up, and then he drove me all the way to Colorado. I didn't even have to drive. And we passed by his old house in Taos on the way. And I'm like, what are the chances that we passed by your house on the way to Colorado? Like, you knew the way. And then ended up in Colorado, where I've been here for 6 years.
And that's I mean, you were in Colorado. Okay, so 6 years. What? Okay, no, you weren't in Colorado when we started being Facebook friends. You were still in Atlanta, I guess. Interesting, because I was growing weed up in Fort Collins when we started kind of getting energetically aware of each other or whatever. Interesting. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. When you get to Colorado, how did you like that land, the promised land for the new hippie? I mean, how did you feel about that? San Francisco's dead. Like, it's Colorado now, bruh.
Oh, I love San Francisco. I
I'm
did
not.
love San
You get my point,
Francisco.
right? Though it's like
Yeah.
there's a scene in the fucking Mile High area.
I think the first thing that I realized when I got here was how oppressed Atlanta is or was.
What do you
Just
mean by
that
oppressed?
it's really heavy there. I started, I guess, getting into my body. Maybe there's words, maybe the word came that was oppression. It was like, there's something heavy there where it wasn't here. And I guess it could have to do with like the crystalline mountains, like the energy here is higher. Like, people are more tuned into health and wellness here. People are tuned into their bodies a little bit more here. I do realize that you have to be a little more skillful and in shape to live in Colorado. Like, I just can't imagine people from Atlanta driving their box Chevys around the mountain. Like, they have no skills if they were to run out of gas, you know. I don't even think some of those cars would get up the mountain. It's just a different life. And there was a lot more freedom here. And, you know, I don't know what's Atlanta and what is me coming from Alabama to across the nation, kind of that freedom path.
Was a
But I
cap
had a
rising. You're
network.
going to be attracted to mountains. You want to climb those
Yes,
hills.
which I was always scared of mountains. I was scared of the cold, but you know, it sunshines 300 days out of the year here. So it's a different type of cold. My hair looked good versus the South,
You're
and I was
feeling it.
loving it.
Yeah.
I was feeling it, yeah. And so my friend, she was a belly dance instructor, and so I started belly dancing here some. I started working as a nanny and found a family with some kids, and that was supporting me. And then I started teaching yoga here in Lafayette, Colorado, and um, that's been good. I've met a lot of people and had a positive impact in a lot of people's lives here.
I've seen it
And I
firsthand.
like the yoga. Yeah. Well, and then COVID, when that hit, I ended up like for me, I got muscle cramps in my arms, and I literally enjoyed the 18 days being stuck in my house by myself. I took Theraflu the whole time and didn't really try to get online and focus too much. So I think that's what really saved the day for me. But I got really curious about getting the muscles to relax in my arm. And so I had this book. It was Ball Therapy by Ellen somebody. And I started reading the book and
And when we
learning the
say ball
techniques.
therapy, we mean yoga
A
ball
literal
therapy.
ball, yeah.
Yeah.
And started learning about myofascial release and the techniques to get muscles released. And I was able to get my pinched nerves unleashed, where before it was like nobody could tell me, oh, is it in the wrist? Is it in the elbow? Is it in the shoulder? Is it in the brachial plexus? Doctors won't tell you. And I'm like, okay, I have an I'm very adverse to the health system. Like, you go to a doctor, they don't tell you anything, or you go to the doctor and they tell you to go see another doctor, or they'll tell you the wrong thing. And like insurance, oh, we didn't cover that one for you. Sorry. I know we said it was in network, but it really isn't. And I was just getting really frustrated with the medical system now that I'm like on my own and not on my parents' insurance anymore. And I was paying so much for the insurance, and they would send me through this rigorous interview system to like get the insurance. And I'm like, did you really need my medical records? Isn't that a violation of my privacy to have my medical records? But yet that's what they were asking for. And so I literally would shut down every time it came time to have to buy insurance, and I'd miss the deadline, and then I'd start having issues, and I'm like, oh my God, I need the insurance. So it's like this back and forth. And I was like, realizing as I did the myofascial release, I was healing my own body in a lot of different ways. Like where my knees would be tight, they started releasing. I fixed my shoulder at the time. Um, I could, I felt so good that I joined Yogi Flight School and started learning inversions at age 44, which I had never thought I would ever do inversions in yoga. And started killing it. It was my favorite pastime thing to do. It made me feel really good. It made me feel really strong. And um, where other people, doctors would be like, "Oh, you're gonna need this surgery." No, I didn't need the surgery. I just needed to let the muscles relax so that the ligaments weren't being pulled anymore. So that they were saying that I was gonna have atrophy in my arm muscles because of the nerves, and I'm like, I got the nerves released, and so I don't have the atrophy. So I started teaching the myofascial release, and just the feedback that I started getting was like blowing my mind. I'm like, oh, this is bigger than I thought. So I kept studying it. I ended up getting the
Just so people are
myofascia.
clear, what is fascia? What is myofascia?
So myo is muscle, fascia is skin, and so or fibers, and so you have muscles. And when you have a trauma or traumatic force hit it, or you have emotional pain that gets stuck in a muscle, sometimes the muscle starts to bulge. They're called sarcomeres. They're tiny fibers that make up that muscle, and they start to get irritated and they make the muscle bulge. When the muscle bulges, there's skin that comes over that muscle, and it'll start to crinkle on the edge. Like imagine like saran wrap or the skin on a piece of chicken. At the edge, it starts to peel up. When it starts to peel up, it starts to cause pain. And it'll start to like pull on other muscles or other joints and pulling them out of alignment. So a lot of people get slip disc. They feel like they have pinched nerves everywhere. They may just feel super tight and they can't get the release at all. Like they just settle for it, especially people that sit at a computer and they're like this, your rhomboids stop working and then your traps get really sore, your neck gets sore. So it's myofascia is the second support system in the body next to the skeletal system. And we never learned about it in school. Maybe you did, I didn't.
Yeah.
It's made up of 90% water, and it holds everything traumatic from physical impact to emotional impact to even like I'm very sensitive, so I have to have a very subtle alarm clock But I used to have one that like rang these two big bells.
Gone are the rave days. She's like, I need a quiet alarm.
Oh, opposite, total opposite now. So that bell would startle me, and then that startled, tense energy gets stuck in your tissues, just like if a fire truck or a loud sirens come by. It does the same thing. So we're not even aware of half the stuff that causes myofascial pain. Even carrying a bunch of grocery bags on one arm, or sitting on a wallet in your pocket day after day after day, and you wonder why your hips feel off, is
Mhm.
simple things that can cause these distortions in the body. And after time, it seems like it's a bigger deal than it really is. So we're like, oh, let me go to the doctor. Me have the doctor tell me what's wrong with me, right? Because we want somebody else to fix us.
So they start dealing
Um,
with symptoms as opposed to root causes.
yeah, and so they're like, oh, well, let me give you this medication right here for the pain, and a surgeon is going to want to do surgery. Homeopathy is going to want to do homeopathy stuff. Me, I'm like, let's learn how to tune into ourselves and let's explore ourselves so we get to know ourselves. Let's build the body map. Let's do it with the breath, and let's figure out what's going on with our own selves. And so that's what I teach now. So it's more about like teaching people how to breathe, um, how to relax completely, because we're in this society where it's like go go go, do this, do that at your demand. We don't have much time for ourselves, so it's a class where it really gives you permission to just tune into yourself and stop for a second and kind of like let go.
Word. Yeah. I mean, that's how I stumbled upon you. Basically, you were like, "Oh, check out these balls," and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is a game changer." I don't do it as much as I should be, but it really does. I remember doing it at some point, like laying on the ground and doing the nut peanut ball on my neck and stuff, and just being like, it's just a game changer. Is the best way I could put it. Like posture and breathing and everything was just dramatically altered. All right, so that I just I interrupted you to get people on the wave of what fascia is. So you've been doing that in yoga. When did you get into sound bowl healing?
So I was having some frustrations out here, with people again. It's kind of like in the previous life, it's like, are y'all really my friends because we're not living the same lifestyle? Um, it kind of started happening again, almost like another dark night of the soul, right? They're not as intense anymore because I'm like, I've already experienced isolation for periods of time. So now it's kind of like, I like that. Um, but I noticed that I was having some frustrations with some things. So I started um, asking the universe, like, what do I need? What do I need? And then this girl popped out of nowhere on Facebook. Her name's Ricky,
Oh yeah,
and
Ricky. Shout out.
she teaches family constellations. And so I did a discovery call with her, and what she was saying made a lot of sense. So I joined her program and started doing family constellations, and I was enamored by it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I've never done therapy at all, even though I'm a psychology major, and it was kind of like psychotherapy meets magic. So it was fun. At the same time, it was very explorative, and I do like exploring the inner landscapes of things, the emotions and the sensations in the body. So that was a space that I could do that with. But then the magical part came in when I'm in a Zoom call with about 20 different strangers, and we're role playing. And if I'm the client, then somebody's being my mom or somebody's being my grandfather or whatever, and they're literally speaking what my parents would say and how they would say it. And I'm like, how do they don't even know my parents? So there's this form of
It's not channeling, but it's almost like that.
it's like channeling or yeah, it's amazing. And so one of the things that came out of that, and I was already feeling it, was everything is vibration.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I need more vibration around me. I need like I was in a space where like some things were kind of like heavy on me. And it's like I can't just think my way out of this. It's so heavy I can barely breathe. I was like, I need something to whirl this stuff up. And so I was like looking online, and I saw singing bowls, sound healing bowls. They were on sale. And I'm like, that's my call right there. I found the deal. So I bought the bowls and started playing, and it started unraveling things, and I started playing intuitively, and I could feel them in my body. um, and then I got a drum, like a native drum,
Are the
and
tuning
that's
bowls tuned?
Three of them are tuned to one octave and three are to another octave. And I was like trying to send the bowls back because I was like, I want them all on one octave. This isn't a legit set. And then I started doing more research and come to find out, so they resonate with the chakras, but when they're in the other octave, it's like over to the side, which is more of the intuitive aspects of things. So it's more into what I was into, like not kind of like chakras are kind of like mainstream, but these were hitting like things that weren't so mainstream. And so I was like, I'm just going to keep the bowls. And so I play chords on three together, and then I play the other chord on the other three, which works out. So they are tuned, but some are on different octaves. So I don't play them per se for healing one-on-one. I do that experimentally with my friends, but I do hold sound baths and I play with several people in the community, like with the didgeridoos and a bunch of different bell sounds. And I've kind of added to my collection. I have one more sound bath before I leave here, which is expected to pack out. And they love it. And I really I didn't understand the impact that it had on people until the last sound bowl session that I held. And one of my students, came up and started talking to me after, and he wasn't there. I was like, he's somewhere else. And I was like, why don't
Was
you
that
go
the
and
one I
change
was
clothes?
at?
Yeah, it was Kevin.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
was like, why don't you go and change clothes and then come back and talk to me before you leave? And sure enough, when he came back, it was like he was back to himself. So the sound bowls take you out of your body. Like it's tuning your body, but your mind is you're so relaxed that your mind can kind of either go out of your body or you're tuning in with it. So it's something to experience if you ever get the chance to have a sound bowl
I'd
session.
never done it before, and I went when we've hung out, and I went, and you were doing it with an older gentleman who was kind of doing Chinese kind of bells and a didgeridoo at one point, and I don't think I was next to Kevin, who I gave an astrology reading at some point. Shout out Kevin, an Aquarius,
He's
heavy
great.
Aquarius, I think, yeah. But anyway, I I was jazzed after that. It was surreal. I mean, I do chakra chanting and music and stuff like that, so I get at some level that stuff, but I'd never done a sound bowl. I don't know why. I just, I didn't buy any and I didn't know anybody who did it and whatever. So when I did it under you, it felt like super healing is too trite and cliche of a word. It's an experiential kind of modality that really does allow just shifting to occur. If you want to get metaphysical, you can, but at the very least, in a physical sense, cymatically, you're kind of creating very real effects. It's practical magic, for lack of a better term. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really good shit,
So
and I had a
the
blast.
notes as you spin the bowls start to resonate with the energy centers of your body. So if it is a C note, then that chakra is going to start moving, or the energy is going to start moving. So if you've had any trauma, to the point where like a chakra center is not open, then the sound bowl can start to make movement in that area. And when we breathe, we kind of breathe through the chakras, like integrating these energies. So if our heart is not connected to our solar plexus, and we're moving from just one chakra below, we're missing our will. Like we may have the desire, we may know the vision, but we can't interact with it.
Mhm.
We may love that desire, but we can't make it happen.
Mhm.
Or if we're not rooted, then everything's kind of up in the air. So it's like it could fly away from us. We love it, we're doing it, but we can't really bring it home. We can't really stabilize it.
Mhm.
So having all the chakras activated helps us to be a full spectrum of energy where we can do what we love, we can ground it, and we can do it with love. We have the vision, we have the higher purpose. And it's like integrating all of those. And these sounds kind of start to ping these spots in our bodies to wake up, to join the party.
So, that covers the sound bowl aspect. I know that's a newer endeavor for you, but also one that you enjoy quite a bit, and I've experienced, and I know it's something you have to do. It's kind of like, I don't know, swimming, where it's like talking about jumping in the water doesn't, it can sound one way, but then doing it, you're like, oh my god, it's so different. So people should
Hmm.
definitely check out sound bowls.
Yeah.
We're kind of caught up to where you are now, essentially. I mean, I know we could. What kind of stuff do you want to talk about that we haven't, or is there anything about your past up till now that we haven't addressed that you want to?
um, so I think it's important to say that I've always kind of wanted to have my roots somewhere. I thought, I'd have the family, I'd have the home, we'd create from there. But, life doesn't always go the way that we think it will. So I started working with some people in Atlanta on a project in the hood. We were trying to revitalize the hood of Atlanta and did that for several years and really putting myself into places that I probably should not have been in, but for some reason I was really protected. And in that, I learned a lot about like the city. I learned a lot about renovating homes. I networked with some people that I'm still connected with today that do real estate and have a good heart and intention to make things better. Unfortunately, I did learn how the city works and how neighborhoods are manipulated by people of power to keep them suppressed, which was very unfortunate. And instead of becoming like the whistleblower, I just was like, this is just not for me. But, that having that community and that neighborhood or something where people can come together in the same environments and create together has always been part of what my vision is in life. And even though I've kind of been like a gypsy soul roaming around, eventually I do hope to find some more rooted space, which is the irony is my business is rooted space, but that is rooted in my root chakra and through my heart and my vision connected to a higher community. And one day maybe that will become brick and mortar or it may become a community, and that is the higher vision for me. So I am looking for community, whether it's in the United States or whether it's in another location that makes sense, but would like to, have sustainable food sources, have um, a place where people can create and really become their authentic selves, because that is like one of the most important things to me. Even though I do yoga and a lot of things that involve movement, I'm very deep into understanding emotions and what drives people. And I feel like one of the most what's the saddest thing is lost potential. And I see so much potential in people, and I try not to like base my decisions off of that. But I do want to help people unlock their potential so that that can flourish in this world. And that is helping people become more self actualized. And at the same time, it will be actualizing my dreams as well. Um, but I would like to offer that space for somebody one day. And to get there, it means that I have to have my own space. And I do see that the world is a pretty crazy place right now. So what does that look like? And I'm definitely ready to tune back into nature more. I'm about to take a sabbatical where I'm going to be traveling, but staying out in nature instead of hotels or Airbnbs as much as possible, just to reacclimate myself. And I'm hoping that through that experience and time, that vision will start to come more to life, and that I'll raise my vibrations to the point that I start connecting with other people and like minds that are ready to work together to make something happen. And ideally, that would be on some land, building sustainable homes, sustainable community, sustainable food sources, and activities that generate products and things that are activities that people can enjoy and have the happiest life that we can.
Venus and Aquarius stuff, North Node and Virgo stuff for sure. So, I mean, I know you've talked a little about hempcrete, like in private. Like, what are some of
Mhm.
the avenues that you see that are most exciting to you right now in terms of? I mean, you've got your personal practice, sound healing and yoga and myofascial. Like, those are kind of your wheelhouses, you could say. What are the things that you're starting to turn on to? I know that you've sent me sovereignty, or I don't even know how to describe it, kind of like citizenship and birth chart stuff, or not birth chart, birth certificate stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure where we want to take this conversation. It's up to you. I mean, I guess my question, if I had one, was like, you've got certain particular superpowers, and obviously, like, Professor X has a place, so Wolverine can not be an alcoholic, and Beast can read in the library, and all this shit. So, what are some of the stuff that you're finding yourself turning on to lately that aren't in your wheelhouse right now?
So, the state of the world is very up in the air right now. So I'm trying to learn my rights. And the more that I learn about law, the more that I learn the words that I thought meant certain things mean something totally different. So I found a guy, his name's Brandon
Brennan Joe.
Brandon Joe Cohen Williams, I think. He's One Stupid Fuck is the name of his page.
I'm gonna try to
He's
get him on
pretty
here. He's
awesome.
sassy. Yeah.
He's great,
Like, I'm
he's
not gonna
great.
hold your dick.
He's
I don't give a
funny,
fuck. Yeah.
and, he keeps it alive, and so I've been taking his free course. It's 37 videos, they're like an hour long, and he breaks things down in a way that you can understand and gives you practical exercises to do to reclaim your sovereignty. I think that is important, and I think that it is available today more than it ever has been before. I know it's a lot harder if you're on the cutting edge and pioneering a movement of sorts, like, all the rules aren't there, and you have to really scurry to find what to do, how to do it, and then you're gonna get in trouble a lot more. But people have been doing this for a while now, and people are seeing results, and people are changing their status. And so you have spiritual sovereignty, and then you have, like, legal sovereignty, and I want both. And to do that, I can't be dependent on other systems. I have to really know myself. I have to know the law. Um, and what's interesting, what I've learned so far is that, even though I grew up with Christianity, I guess once you're saved, always saved. I still, Jesus is my homeboy type stuff, but I'm not based in the religion so heavily. But when you get into law and trust law, which is the highest law in our society or in our world here, um, everything is based off the trustee and the beneficiary, and this language is in the Bible. And so it really makes me start rethinking the Bible. We have it interpreted in one way by so many preachers, and then your parents and your schools, your Sunday schools, and things like that. But what is the real meaning of it in regards to, like, how it operates in our world that governs us? And what contracts are we fulfilling every day? What contracts can we get out of? So hopefully, you'll have him on the podcast and
I'd like to.
direct more
There's no
people that way.
guarantees. Yeah, yeah. It's a total rabbit hole. We've had guests like Brendan, I think his name was, came on and told us his story many moons ago about how he kind of became aware of these things and kind of got off the system. It's actually a really good episode because he talked about just a court situation where it's almost like if you speak certain codes, people within systems will turn into almost Agent Smiths, essentially,
But
where it's
just
like,
again, to make it really simple, it's, as I understand, it's basically because the whole thing is based on insurance and bonds. And
Mhm.
once you understand it in the language and whom to approach with what, then they kind of turn into Agent Smith. Because strangely enough, I mean, I guess just like certain doctors or something, they have some type of, lingo unto themselves or knowledge that maybe they don't share on a webinar every Friday or something, but they still have to adhere to it. So then when you trigger that and you provide the right input, just like with an AI, you give the right prompt, and then
Mhm.
a certain reaction is causally necessary because, again, it's all based on insurance and bonds. And they would know that then otherwise they could potentially be personally liable. They definitely don't want that. And so then from that, if I'm explaining it correctly, more or less a whole chain of things can occur with all kinds of most curious outcomes, simply because you recognize them as what they are, in a sense, which is, I would say, again, kind of an insurance scam, and not what they pretend to be, which is, the overlord divine justice, from your national government.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
Jinx.
they're saying, like, the trust is God's law. The trust is the top. And in the trust you have trustees and you have beneficiaries. If you're the trustee, you can operate and manage and write checks and stuff for the beneficiary, but you're not the beneficiary. You're not going to get the money. You're not going to get the resources. You're going to be able to
You're like a
manage the resources.
steward of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you're the beneficiary, so what happens when you get into like policemen and bills and things like that, they try to flip that to where they become the beneficiary and you're the trustee. And you with capital letters are the trustee. So it's like learning your place and switching those letters. There's a whole slew of things. I mean, like there's so many contracts that we don't even realize we're in. Like it took me forever to get a divorce. And I'm like, why do I have to ask the judge, can I get a divorce and get his he has to say whether I can get divorced or not. Well, come to find out, it wasn't just me and my husband getting married. We were married to the state. They interjected themselves in there, so they did have a say-so in it.
That's why there's
They
like
could
a
have said
marriage
no.
license. Yeah.
Anything you have to have a license for, you're under contract and you're working under a lower law. They're trying to make everybody
The
commercial.
example you gave, just that it's something practical and everyone can check this. Let's see if I can do this without doxing myself. Let's see.
Don't fear the Reaper. Don't be
So
afraid of the devil.
basically, yeah, you have your name, yeah, right? In
We can't see that.
in capital letters, but well, anyone can
Like
get their
the
own
legal
credit card
name.
or something. And ever since, even as a child, you know, you're receiving letters from some office, or your parents receive something, or even you just, you know, you just fumble around your parents' wallet and you see these cards. And, you know, sometimes now I'm wondering if I'm just, you know, kind of making this up to make myself appear more genius than I was. I'm not sure, but I distinctly believe I remember that I was wondering, like, why the F is this all in capital letters? And why does it always say, in German it says Herr or Frau, so in your case it would be Mr., Mrs. or something. And this also may be in capital letters, and especially in the credit cards, it's all on capital letters. And what is going on here? And this is there's an official term for this, which is called nom de guerre, which is like war name. And at least in one historical, who knows if we can trust that explanation, they basically say the more capitalized your name is, so it can either be none of it, or it can be the last name, or it can be first and last name. Look at your credit cards, guys. It's all capitals. And the more caps it is, the more enslaved you are, basically. So the lower your status. And that already shows you how you're kind of being treated and addressed by the Matrix. Yeah, I want to say more or less as cattle.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, this kid Brendan came on, and I think you know him through like Hare Krishna stuff, Raphael. I don't remember off the top of my head, but he was going through the legal court, and it was like, this is true of secret societies or whatever. If you show the secret handshake and other people know it, like there can be positive benefits. You know, if you say, I mean, sometimes a good example, it's like if I'm like, hey, you're a Mercury and Aries, third house. Like if I talk about certain jargon, it'll trigger you in a certain way. There's sometimes positive ramifications to that. But what his episode, I forget what number it is off the top of my head, really early on, probably 70 or something. He was in court and he was saying certain words or code, if you want to put it that way, that was almost, you know, in the Matrix movies where like the guards are guards, or, you know, like real military, and then they kind of glitch out into like Agent Smiths. If you've seen the Matrix films, you know what I'm talking about. The first Matrix movie, at least. One Morpheus is like up in the fucking getting helicoptered out or whatever. Basically, that's kind of what he was experiencing. Where if you tripwire certain kind of legalese, for lack of a better term, it's going to cause people to understand your.
I'm assuming he wants to say it's causing certain people to understand you. Well, different. Oh yeah, now
Cool.
I can go ahead, Jim. Yes.
It's like yellow flag stuff. Basically, I guess bottom line is, if people, how would I put it? People are going to treat you a certain way. It's almost like being a Karen. It's like, let me talk to your manager, something like that. Like if you trigger certain traps, booby traps, linguistically, it's going to cause certain effects essentially. And then people are like, oh shit, he's playing 5D chess, and they know it, and they know, you know, and it turns into this very weird psychological warfare that, like, once they realize the cattle is like looking for the pasture, so to speak.
But there's certain organizations that are easier to deal with. Like Brendan was saying, how the IRS is pretty simple to hold yourself in this position, but like credit cards are like gonna pull teeth. You know, so it's about jurisdiction. Do
Or
they have
passports
jurisdiction
even.
over
Like,
you?
yeah.
Well, evidently there's a elevated passport that you can get. Like we have basic, but if
All
we get
caps.
a
Yeah.
contract where we're at, then we can get the better passport.
Right. So this is one of the many rabbit holes that you and I have been exploring. the devil is in the details. The card of the episode that I pulled was the devil card, so it's not surprising. I mean, it's a Capricorn ruled card, so if you've ever seen the movie The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves, it's a little like that. Al Pacino's running the shit. Jay-Z, he's a Capricorn, he's running the shit, so to speak. In any event, so that's one I mean, I know you haven't probably finished that video series, so we can only speak so well on that. I'll try to get that guy on here at some point, even though he seemed like he was just a fun guy to talk to. I'd like to hear his story beyond the fact that he's kind of trying to help people take the red pill, so to speak.
Yeah.
What other kind of domains of wheelhouses are you looking into that aren't dance or yoga, basically?
I guess pretty much like astrology I started getting into. I like the aspect everything that I do revolves around healing of some sort, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual. And I started finding that the astrology can tap into that as well, which, you're pretty amazing at it, Jim. And, you and Raphael both pull cards on that. It's it's fascinating to me. And so where it used to be kind of woo woo, like, is this true or not? There, and I still have that inkling of, that's a possibility. But there's so much that I'm finding in the astrology that can help people with identifying aspects of themselves. Like when I started learning that I have a Scorpio moon, like no wonder I like kind of hide in the shadows of things and like really analyze or investigate
Psychology
things.
major. Yeah.
Psychology major, like I want the mind, what's deep and you can't just see it. And then you know, um, helping people through those modalities. That's kind of the goal. So just kind of learning that, and I want to couple that with the um, family constellations eventually, because we need to heal as a people on this planet, and the methods that are given to us by law and by what's available through the AMA um, are just trash a lot of the times. Like you may have some little stardust around there somewhere, but somebody that actually cares. But there's an agenda there, and my agenda is the opposite of theirs. So really finding modalities like astrology, family constellations. I like the tarot because people get something from that, especially when it's synchronizing with astrology. There's magic there. Like you say on your card jams, like you can't make
I
this
pull
shit
cards
up.
daily. No, it's amazing how things sync. Even the
Yeah,
fact that I pulled the devil card, we both have Lucifer, the asteroid, conjunct our suns individually.
yeah.
It's just funny how this came up. And I will say, if people are not into astrology or tarot, it's there's a difference between like real and true. I'm not purporting that any of this is like absolute capital T truth. Who knows what the fuck truth is? But there are maps, like the map isn't the territory, but the maps can help. And yeah. As far as tarot goes, if somebody's like kind of skeptical about it, buy a deck and kind of pull cards for the day and see if they vibe. That's how I got into it. And I think anybody can do it. Maybe some people are more inclined to be kind of tapped into their subconscious and psyche, because at the very least, what we're doing is chopping up a comic book, basically, right? This comic book of the deck. Oh, Ace of Wands. Um, chopping up this comic book, and we're projecting our subconscious onto it, and it's going to mean something to us in the moment. Now, some people, Alexander Mazzone, he's been on. He's like, "Oh, this is quantumly entangling." Like, I'm not sure about the mechanics. I mean, tarot as we know it wasn't even necessarily a thing before the Golden Dawn, which is a very specific culture from Victorian kind of I mean, it birthed like Crowley and people like that. So there's a lot of interesting aspects to it. And actually, I really like the David D'Angelo stuff. This is almost like the Crowley 2.0 for me. It's very kind of a hyper artsy kind of stuff. It's got a new resonator. I'm rambling, but if people are skeptical about astrology or tarot, I'd say hit me up for a reading. But bottom line, fuck with these modalities. Fuck with any modality, really, ultimately, and see what resonates and what doesn't. Allow yourself to explore with curiosity, and you might be surprised at what you find. As your story has shown us, like you were willing as a kind of a free floating grand water trying to kind of go with the flow of things, and you ended up in a lot of reality tunnels that maybe you would not have planned, coming from Dothan, being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to go to Atlanta," all this stuff. So I have a nervous energy. I am a Sun and Moon Gemini, Jupiter and Aquarius, and my moon is conjunct Chiron, and this is one of my favorite people I'm talking to. So maybe I do have a nervous energy about me. In any event, if y'all don't know, well, maybe I shouldn't get into what Team Rabbit Hole is. It's like, this is my podcast, y'all. I'm not nervous. In any event, what kind of other stuff do you want to talk about, Raphael? Anything you want to talk about or ask about? I mean, myofascia balls are crazy. Get them. Kelly sells them. Go to her link tree. They're not that expensive, and they're a very practical kind of way to embody a mode of self-healing, for lack of a better term.
So one thing we didn't speak about, I'm not sure if I caught that right in the green room, if you said you wanted to talk about psychology and, let's say, wellness or dis-ease as well, because you explained it with the alarm clock and the fascia, but I'm not sure if that is what you meant in terms of the psychological triggering for trauma or disease, if you want to talk about that, because I think that's a fascinating area. And just so if I know whether we're talking about the same thing, basically.
Yeah. So, as I've experienced teaching the myofascia, I also learn through the students' feedback, and I have students that are regulars. These people are committed to the cause; like they're seeing results, and it's fascinating because I'll talk to them about what's going on, and what I'm realizing is that not only does it release the muscles, but if it's a physical traumatic experience that somebody has, it's physical. So they may get relief physically. But a lot of times people will cry. So
Mhm.
so the way that I teach is not like, oh, roll the balls here. It's more about tune into the breath. This is how you breathe. This is how you let go and relax, kind of get out of your mind and into your parasympathetic nervous system so that things happen more naturally. And so it's like fully about the release. And once you get there, like you hit up against spots in your body that will bring you to tears. Like it's a different relationship with pain. And that's why I have a online series called It Hurts So Good. Because when you realize that like you hit up against that pain and you release it, you get euphoria, right? So when you're done working on the balls, you feel euphoric. And in that, what's being held in that tension is either physical trauma, emotional trauma, um, or mental trauma, which is emotional. So
Or all
some
the
people,
above, right? I mean, it could.
they're all
Yeah.
connected. But some people cry. Some people have images come through their minds of like memories that are being released. Some people it goes in a lot of well, everybody, if you work long enough, it all goes into your body. So you have to drink a lot of water and flush it out of your system, or you will feel like you have the flu, like almost like when you have a traumatic experience and you just start getting sick. It's the same thing. You're releasing all of it at once. So where a lot of people go to talk therapy and they're like having to relive these traumatic experiences, how harsh that can be sometimes. Sometimes it re-triggers the
I have to
trauma.
talk for a long time if you're not drinking clean water and doing exercise or whatever to actually detox whatever is being released into your system chemically, probably also, yeah.
Yeah, it feels nasty. And it happens like 2 days later, so there's not like this consistent like, "Oh, I did this and this happened." You're like, "Why do I feel like shit today?" Well, because I
Solar
rolled
flares.
2 days before. There's so many reasons, but you can
Yeah.
but it's like doing the balls, you don't have to relive the traumatic experiences a lot of the time. What I do encourage is you to just trust the process and to go to your edge. And that's a metaphor in life is like, you know, do we sit back? Is our nature just to sit back and kind of let things come to us, or do we actually go after things, or is there this balance between the two? And it's like when you find that balance between the two and you just kind of sink into that, then like you're going to bump up against things. And I just say go into that edge, go to the edge of your threshold of pain, like know how much you can take, and then see what happens, and then take a breath and see if you can stay there a little bit longer, because the pain didn't get there in one day. Usually it took years to get in there, and you can get it out in a day. You can get it out in one session sometimes. And if you don't get it out in one session, at least you know, okay, a pea size place in my body I can get out now. Maybe I can get a noodle out, but these boulders or these knots and these rocks, that's going to take some time. So you start to build this roadmap within your mind of what is in your body, and then you start to know your body better. You also start to know what referred pain is. So like
Trauma
you may be
mining.
like, yeah, you
Mhm.
may
Yeah, literally.
it really is. I'd say it's like a scavenger hunt. We're on a scavenger hunt in our body, and like quit talking for a second and just tune into the breath and let your body go, let your breath move through your body and start telling you things. So a lot of times you'll have like neck issues. So like if you're working your neck, I say pay attention to like where you're feeling things. So a lot of times you'll start feeling things behind your eyes. This is referred pain. So if you start getting headaches, then you know that you need to release your neck, not your head. You
Mhm.
don't need to go take that Tylenol, because you can release it here. So it's really just getting people off of the medications, because once you start taking one medication, then like, oh, does this next medication interfere with my other one? And then does that one interfere with this one? And then you become a complete wreck, because somebody told you to take all this medicine. So it's really just a modality to get to know yourself a lot better in many different ways, relieve yourself of any tension. And, I did pay for a masseuse the other day because I wanted the experience with her. And, but before that, I haven't had a masseuse in a year and a half. I do it all myself. Well, yeah, for the most part.
Yeah. It's like, hey, wait, I've helped. These balls really do. I mean, this is a specific one where there's a pair of them, and you put them underneath your scapula, your like shoulders, and you just do certain breathing and stretching. And I'm not kidding. She's got a YouTube channel with little instructions on it. I don't know if that's for the public or a paid thing. I forget. But either way, it's very succinct and helpful. I actually listen to it on like 0.75 speed, so the music is slower because I want to just absorb it that much more. It in talking about this, it's like, oh yeah, I need to do that because I work out every day and bike and stuff now. But it's like I need to it for as much as we kind of drive into stuff. We were reading a book called "The Body Keeps the Score," and it's like your body is keeping track of all this shit, like whether you're aware of it or not. And it's not. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, my mom beat my dad, and I hold it here. Like sometimes it is very traumatic psychological events that get stuck in your body. Sometimes it's just mismanagement and lack of awareness. And this lack of awareness tends to be an issue for everybody. Even in the spiritual community, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I'm a 12D Pleiadian. And it's like, all right, but how are your hips aligned? Or whatever. It's like the meat too fucking matters, even if it's a holographic dream or something like that. So, like if Mario doesn't have a raccoon tail, it's going to affect the game. If he does have a raccoon tail,
Well, I almost want to
really
say it
tough.
matters because it's a holographic dream.
Paradox. So, yeah, the balls are crazy. He was talking about psychology. I don't know if we
Right. So all
got
I
the
wanted
answer.
to mention, so what I was thinking of is something different,
I'm
which you
actually going
may
to use the
also,
restroom really quick. Keep talking.
oh sure, which you may
I've never
also
done
be,
this.
which you may also be interested in, which is there is even a very great presentation by an American doctor. I'm gonna look this up in 1 second now, and it's called New Medicine. Oh yeah, there we have it. And there is a doctor, right? The title or subtitle usually is called 5 Biological Laws. There is one presentation by a professor or a doctor called Melissa Sell, and she's explaining it pretty well. It's originated the concept with a German doctor originally, and what they did, and I'll recount it briefly, is they realized basically because of an individual tragedy with a cancer case, which this German doctor had himself. Then he went to a self-help group and realized, oh, basically all these guys have the same cancer, and surprise, they all just recently had lost their sons. And then you can already guess what kind of cancer it was. And then he got more into this and tried to map it out, and then also realized that by doing brain scans without a contrasting agent, where then apparently you have a different type of picture that you see, or you can see more, he could even correlate and see exactly where swollen areas are in the brain. And again, holographically, they would relate to different areas in the body. And then they could also relate to different past trauma, basically. And he explored that, and he then showed how all kinds of illnesses, even up to something I found quite interesting, which would be allergies, could be caused simply by traumatic childhood events, as one example.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's like the psych part of it, and there is of course always more to the picture, but that's a really great concept, especially if before someone was still in the way of thinking of, oh, something just happened genetically or whatever. It gives a different way to think about yourself and really, understand your own life and why something may not be aligned. And the second thing I wanted to bring up is Peter Levine. I'm not sure if you mentioned him, or you probably know about him. He is a doctor. He wrote a book, for example, with Gabor Mate called In an Unspoken Voice, How the Body Releases Trauma and Restores Goodness, which was recommended to me by a shaman friend many years ago. And that basically explains what you just talked about, which is this whole idea of how trauma is stored in the body. And with very simple body therapy, basically you can skip many hours
A
of
lot of
talk
therapy.
therapy, let's just say. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah. That's what I hear the most is people like, "You just saved me a whole lot of money." And I'm like, "Good, because we may not have that much money in the future, so you need to learn techniques to be able to help yourself." And I do agree with you about, ailments showing up later in life. I'm a nanny, I've been a nanny, so, one of the kids, he has asthma, and I'm like, it's a different type of asthma, it's not like a real asthma, it's like some airway blockage thing, and I'm like, "Well, where did this come from?" And anyways, when he was a kid, they had a house fire and he got trapped in there for a moment. And then the smoke didn't really like affect him too much, but it was the trauma from that that he started developing this asthma thing. So I do think there's something there. And I also think that you will be able to find that in their astrological chart as well. There's
If not a
some
family
medical
constellation.
astrology.
Yeah. It's a little different.
I bet you if you're in a family constellation, somebody's gonna come in there that you don't know, and they're gonna be like, "I feel like I'm in a house fire."
Right. I was gonna
That's
say,
the way it works.
the kid you're nannying, I wonder it has to do with the fact that he's like channeling his dog, the one of those pit bulls or whatever those dogs are. They breathe horribly. It's like he doesn't have asthma. He's a reflector. He's a reflector, and
Maybe that's how they have the dogs, as a reflection.
right.
Yeah.
Um, I've never gone to the bathroom on a podcast, so that was so weird. I don't know what y'all talked about. I'll have to check it back out. But it sounds like you. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to talk about? Start there. I mean, there's a whole slew of things. Your team rabbit hole is fuck. Like I said, my Jupiter's conjunct your Venus. Your gang. We hang out. So, if people are interested in this kind of stuff, hit up Kelly. She's got the moves, as Mastercraft would say. Anything we haven't addressed that you'd like to talk about? And if not, I mean, we can start writing it down.
Yeah, maybe
Oh, you
start
got a
writing it
list
down.
there?
My
Okay,
earbuds
I
are
don't
gonna
know.
die. No, my earbuds are gonna die.
Oh, the devil is in the details. All right. Well, something I've been doing in the end of these, Rafa, I'm glad you told me to pull cards because I'm not saying they're all like super resonant, but they do pop a little different than just sequential numerology or
You
whatever.
just need the right perspective, Jim, and sometimes it takes until the end of the episode to realize what it really means. So
What it's all about. So the yogi tea, I drink these teas. That's part of the reason I had to pee so bad.
I still want them at least to send you some packages of that tea at the very least, So
Something. Yeah. I mean,
We
whatever. We'll
may
go on a tour.
see that in
Yeah.
Arizona. Didn't you say the Temple of Yogi was in Arizona
it's
or
it's
New
in
Mexico?
Espanola, New Mexico. That's where their Sikh
I
temple
think
is.
I'm gonna
I'm
go by
I'm
there.
not sure if
That's
they
cool.
have, or let's say I don't think they have like a factory of it there, and I'm not even sure if I saw that particular tea there. But just I know that this Yogi Bhajan, or what I think that's his name. The one thing that the very nice lady told me when we were there, we were just staying with some Kundalini yoga teachers in the resort. I was about to say camp. It's not a camp. Resort. I don't know, community basically, right? They have all these houses and they have this big building. And the woman just said, "Oh, the guru. Guru is the force that leads you from the darkness to the light." Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice."
Yeah.
So anyhow, I don't even know if they have the tea there, but this was founded by Yogi Bhajan and was one of the original ashrams and still going on. And they're going crazy on Kundalini yoga and doing all those things there. And from what I understand, in the same conglomerate of companies, I'm not sure how they today would be legally related. Also, this Yogi Tea company is somehow a part of it. Again, I'm not sure if they're legally connected, but at least all the, I guess, Sikh, if I'm not going completely off the rails now, yeah, that should be the Sikh, and they're doing the Kundalini yoga, and they would be there. They're Sikhs, I believe, yeah. Are they?
I don't even know if there's people. I mean, I think these guys are in Colorado, but I'm not sure. I got to look into it. Anyway, I actually emailed them and was like, "Come on the podcast." They're like, "We don't do podcasts," but I was like, "I use your teas to divine at the end of the episodes." Like I was saying, so at the end of these episodes, I've been drinking the tea, and this episode says, "The unknown is where all outcomes are possible. Enter it with grace." So I think that is a very good reflection of kind of how your life has gone. I mean, you just kind of went with the flow, but the more you submit to that flow and kind of stay aware while you're kind of going down the log flume, so to speak, but you're going down log flumes. And I like I said, I haven't met many guests. I don't even know, like maybe 5 or 10 of the 300 people we've had on here. You're one of them, and I'm glad to have met you. It's been a pleasure. I do enjoy you. She's cool as fuck, guys, so check her out. And any kind of parting sentiments from y'all?
No, I just thank you for having me on here. And if anybody wants to find me, I think the links are in the bottom of this podcast. If not, you can go to linktree.com/Kelly Brodzinski.
It's below
And
you as we speak.
yeah, it's below. Yeah, go check out the links, and I have everything in that space. So take your time and reach out if you feel the need, or connect with me in any way through social. I'll be happy to connect with you and see where that goes.
Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Check out the stuff. And also, I want to say, if you want to talk to someone who can talk to you in a structured way about marketing and branding, they also want to come talk to you. So who knows? Maybe there's even some combinations
Maybe
of all
so.
of these topics somewhere. And yeah,
Yeah.
thanks everyone for joining.
All
And
right.
thank you so much.
Adios.
Thank you.